Howdy X-Wing players, it's Genghis John back with another theory crafting video. I was trying to wait until new points came out, but it's beginning to look like that will be
Forever! Forever! Forever!
Well, I can't wait anymore, and for this episode we're going to look at a pilot I have never really paid any mind to, but a lot of other players seem to like. Captain Jostero. Captain Jostero comes in the Kirax fighter, a pretty well-rounded chassis with 3 attack, 2 agility, and 6 total health, and a wide range of upgrades including 2 illicit and 2 modification slots, as well as a missile tube. Jostero is one of the dirtiest pilots in the Scum and Villainy faction, as his ability reads: after an enemy ship suffers damage, if it is not defending, you may perform a bonus attack against that ship. So Jostero is bringing an extra 3 dice attack anytime an enemy ship takes damage outside of defending from an attack, which you might think doesn't happen often, but in the Scum and Villainy faction there are legion of pilots and upgrades that afford opportunities for Jostero to trigger. Pro tip: if you're going to bring Jostero, it's best to bring multiple elements that deal damage outside of attacks. So keep that in mind when constructing your list, because it is not best to rely on one single thing to trigger Jostero. Make extra damage, free damage, whatever you want to call it, a theme of your list, not just a trick. So there are actually a couple things that deal damage outside of attacks, regardless of what faction you fly, including bombs, obstacles, namely asteroids and debris clouds, and certain crits, including console fire, loose stabilizer, and stun pilot. But the Scum faction brings many more opportunities for extra damage to the table. One pilot that accomplishes this is Torani Kolda, flying the Chemo fighter. The Chemo, of course, first introduced the Bullseye arc back in 1.0, and Torani is going to punish those that get caught in his Bullseye. After you perform an attack, each ship in your Bullseye arc suffers 1 damage unless it removes 1 green token. So if an enemy ship gets caught without a green token in Bullseye, it just takes a damage. No rolling dice for it, it's a sure thing. If you want to make Torani extra thug nasty, add Snapshot for a guaranteed damage in Bullseye, since the attack triggers before the enemy has a chance to take an action, and Torani's ability, of course, goes off after the actual attack. Another great upgrade that can get Jostero off is the very popular Dengar Gunner. He reads: after you defend, if the attacker is in your firing arc, you may spend 1 charge. If you do, roll 1 attack die unless the attacker chooses to remove 1 green token. On a hit or crit result, the attacker suffers 1 damage. Dengar Gunner is pretty similar to Torani: remove a green token or potentially suffer damage. Ideally, Dengar crew goes on a ship with multiple firing arcs, a printed arc and a turret, giving it more area of effect. Dengar easily slides onto pilots like Cavil, Nomlum, sometimes Nim, and really just any one of the YV666 chassis. The first of 2 illicit type upgrades that can trigger Jostero is Feedback Array, which trades an attack for guaranteed damage to both you and the target. Before you engage, you may gain 1 ion token and 1 disarm token. If you do, each ship at range 0 suffers 1 damage. You'll see Feedback Array a lot on Z95s and other low initiative pilots that are great at blocking, deny the enemy actions, and then deal a damage to the opponent's valuable rendered vulnerable ship. Jostero then capitalizes on the free damage and gets an extra attack on the target. Now, Feedback Array comes at a pretty significant cost to your own ship, a damage and an ion token. So it's definitely best practice to put this on a low-costed pilot or on a ship with a lot of health that takes more tokens to ionize. The second illicit upgrade is not for the weak-hearted, and only truly sadistic players use it, sometimes en masse, on Z95s. That is Dead Man's Switch. It is basically a kamikaze booby trap kind of upgrade that deals a damage to everything at range 0 to 1 after the ship is destroyed. So it obviously triggers Jostero being damage dealt outside of an attack, but be sure to keep Jostero away from ground zero when it goes off. It also works on Jostero himself. You die, deal the damage, that gives you an attack. It's only 2 points and a formidable trick if you can get it off in an ideal situation, which you can certainly orchestrate during the course of a game. I've made 2 lists really quickly just to give you an idea of different combos you can put together to trigger Jostero. Of course, keep in mind points will be changing soon, but for the most part, I think these will be able to remain intact. It's a good idea to include bombs, since that's probably the most consistent way you will be able to get a bonus attack from Jostero. In version 1, we have Nim, who, although fairly skinny in this list, is still the best bomber for Scum, arguably in the whole game. The next 2 ships pair together really well. Namlum is always going to have arc on the attacker, so Dengar is an auto include. You'll either have Dengar remove a green token from the attacker, or Tarani can do it with her ability, and then either Dengar or Tarani can punch in extra damage to trigger Jostero. Namlum is also a good carrier for Feedback Array, being a large-based Initiative 1 pilot. Can set up blocks very well and can use it more, becoming ionized. Jostero brings Dead Man's Switch for the self-destruction extra pew-pews combo. And then in version 2, we go with a cheaper bomber, this time Constable Zuvio, who in this loadout has some awesome tricks up his sleeve, and that gives us room to equip Snapshot on Tarani for the extra thug nastiest mentioned earlier. You'll notice in each list that all of Jostero's wingmates bring something to the table that can deal damage outside of an attack, which I think is the only way to go if you want to find success with Captain Jostero. That's everything I have on Captain Jostero. Hopefully this has been enough to sate your appetite for theory crafting and list building content until new points come out. We'll certainly have a video examining the major points changes when those are eventually released, and we'll also have an episode looking at the most successful lists flown in our Summer TTS League here in a couple weeks after the finals are completed. So, looking forward to you joining us then, and thanks for watching. This is Genghis John, signing off.
Yeah.